there is always the possibility of a new conflict breaking out in the world. In recent years, the eyes of the whole world were fixed on Ukraine and Gaza. Everyone was waiting for news from there, but no one's predictions came true. Last night, we saw in videos uploaded to the internet that one of the world's most brutal conflicts is taking place in Sudan. Throughout the video, I will not show any images from Sudan because what is happening there is unlike anything else. This is a test that the whole world must pass. Nothing happening in Sudan is only about Sudan. What the world thought began yesterday actually has a huge historical background. It is a conflict involving multiple military groups on the battlefield, multiple countries, and dozens of political leaders taking sides. Don't even sit comfortably in your home miles away from Sudan, because if this conflict does not end, you too will be affected. We are a channel that strives to cover geopolitical events around the world in the most comprehensive and unbiased way possible. We work hard so you can learn everything in just 10 minutes and turn off your screen. What's more, we now have dreams of becoming a global player. The easiest way to support us is to take a few seconds to subscribe. If everyone subscribes, we can now go to Sudan. What is happening in Sudan today did not actually start today. It is a much more complex story that goes back a long way. Ever since the country of Sudan came into existence, it has always been in the midst of conflict. The first conflicts broke out between the North and the South immediately after independence. This was essentially a struggle over who would rule the entire country. The winner of that struggle was Omar al-Bashir. Omar al-Bashir has been a soldier since childhood. He joined the army at the age of 15 and spent much of his youth at war. He rose steadily through the ranks. By the 1982nd, he was one of Sudan's most powerful generals. Although the country had a democratically elected government, the real power lay with the military. In 1989, al-Bashir used this power and seized control in a coup. Upon taking office, he shut down all political parties, dissolved parliament, and abolished democracy in the country. He had now become a dictator, ruling over all of Sudan. Al-Bashir was a man who trusted no one. He knew that another general could stage a coup against him, just as he had done. Therefore, he established a special military unit loyal to him alongside the armed forces. There were now two military forces in Sudan. One was the country's armed forces, the other was the Janjaweed group. Al-Bashir used the two forces for different purposes. He used the army against external threats to the country, and the Janjaweed group against internal opponents within the country. There is a commander in this group whose name you should know, Hamdan Dagalo, or Hemedti, as he is known on the streets. Hemedti is not just any commander. He is actually more like a big businessman. He is responsible for managing the country's mines. He sells weapons to many conflict zones in Africa. He conducts secret gold trade with some countries in the Middle East and even with Russia. Hemedti is both very wealthy and militarily powerful. We often see his name in the city of Darfur in the west of the country. This is because the local population there was dissatisfied with the rule of Omar al-Bashir. Over the years, they staged large protests on numerous occasions. The vast majority of these protests were suppressed by forces under Hemedti's command. The main reason Sudan could afford so many soldiers was its oil resources. Thanks to the oil coming from the very center of the country, the soldiers were able to be so powerful and wealthy. In 2011, Sudan split. A new country called South Sudan was established along the line running through the center of the country. Powerful countries in the region, such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, recognized South Sudan's independence. 80% of Sudan's oil reserves remained within South Sudan's borders. Sudan lost half of its income overnight. After the oil revenue disappeared, inflation rose, the quality of life in the country rapidly declined, and there was no investment in areas such as education and health. The people were now struggling to even get food. Finally, a major uprising began. Large protests were held throughout the country. The people wanted democracy to come to the country and living standards to rise. In short, they wanted Omar al-Bashir to step down from power. Omar al-Bashir did indeed lose power, but not through democratic elections. The two military forces he had nurtured for years, led by two commanders, joined forces and overthrew him in a coup. Omar al-Bashir was imprisoned. Now, there were two leaders in the country, Hemedti and Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Both promised the same thing to calm the people and get them to return to their homes. "We are here temporarily. Elections will be held in Sudan, and we will hand over power to a civilian politician." But they did not keep their word. Al-Burhan's administration took complete control. Military headquarters, Khartoum Airport, Sudan State Television, and even the presidential palace fell under Al-Burhan's control. He had become the de facto leader of the country. Hemedti had no objection to this because things were going well for him too. All his business continued, his power and wealth persisted, and he was adding to his fortune. The relationship between the two commanders soured in 2023. Al-Burhan said that there could not be two military forces in the country, and that the soldiers under Hemedti's control had to join the army. This would both break his power and allow him to take control of all trade. Hemedti's move was even tougher. He sent 2,000 of his soldiers to the military unit under Al-Burhan's command. A conflict erupted between the two forces. Al-Burhan narrowly escaped with his life. The conflict that began in the military unit first spread to the capital and then to the entire country. Now it is spreading throughout the world. The Nile River, Africa's largest water source, flows through this country. If the Nile River is damaged, the African economy will be devastated. Hydropower plants, transportation, tourism, and agriculture in Africa depend on the Nile River. The Nile River is the primary water source for Egypt, one of the most powerful countries in the region. On the other hand, Sudan has a coastline on the narrowest strait in the Red Sea. The port of Sudan is one of the most important stops for merchant ships. 10% of world trade passes through this narrow strait. No country in the world wants trade to stop. Sudan is also a country of military importance. Russia, China, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey have made efforts to establish military bases in Sudan. Turkey even proposed leasing land from Sudan to establish a base. One of Sudan's biggest assets is gold. They extract over 50 tons of gold every year. Actually, it's more than that because 50 tons is the official figure. Gold smuggling is very common in Sudan. I don't have any information, but my gut feeling tells me that the amount of gold sold through illegal channels is higher than the official figure. Although Sudan may seem like an insignificant country, it is actually one of the critical countries for world trade. A conflict in Sudan does not only concern Sudan, that is precisely why many countries are involved in the story. One of those countries is the United Arab Emirates, the country that buys the most gold from Sudan. Gold trade is in Hemedti's hands, which is why the United Arab Emirates supports him. Saudi Arabia is one of the countries buying gold, but their relationship is not limited to gold. Hemedti's soldiers have appeared before us many times in Yemen. Saudi Arabia is a party to the Yemen war. Therefore, they also support Hemedti. But remember, this is a complicated story. Both countries have official trade agreements with Al-Burhan. Another player is Libya. When Khalifa Haftar seized power in Libya, his biggest supporters were Hemedti's soldiers. Therefore, there is a strong relationship between them. Hemedti's defeat would also undermine Khalifa Haftar's power. It is clear who he supports in Sudan. Another player is Egypt. They support Al-Burhan for the security of the Nile River and the Suez Canal. The Egyptian economy has been in serious trouble in recent years. They will not want any disruption to trade in the Red Sea. Sudan's two neighbors, Eritrea and Ethiopia, support two different sides. Al-Burhan has established good relations with Ethiopia. In contrast, Eritrea is on Hemedti's side. The last and biggest player is Russia. Putin is not officially on anyone's side, but as you know, I made a video before about how the Wagner Group is always involved in illegal trade in Africa. Wagner is an army composed of mercenaries affiliated with Russia. We know they have close ties with Hemedti. They will likely support him. There is Turkey, which is the big brother of the region. Turkey has become very powerful in Africa over the past 20 years. We resolved the political crises in Somalia and Ethiopia single-handedly. It is certain that we will intervene in the crisis in Sudan at some point. Turkey's intervention could completely change the balance on the map. This is how the situation in Sudan today can be explained. It is a complex issue involving multiple countries. It is unclear who will prevail in the end, but it is certain that the geopolitical balance will shift once again.